Thank you very much. As she was saying, I did have a little brief experience as a teacher, but it was many years ago in a private school, and I don't think it's translatable into the challenges that you have today in working with the public system. So after I received my doctorate in psychology, I had my brain removed, and I thought I'd bring along today, since it is a brain conference. It seemed that after I got the degree, I was always analyzing all my friends and driving them away. And it always seemed to want to blame everything on my mother. So I felt I had to get over that. Even like global warming, yeah, my mother. So, see, I advance a few things here. I'm going to talk to you today about effortful control. Effortful control is something that you've been exercising all morning and may not have realized it. Your brain has been receiving a lot of external stimuli, and it's been going into your limbic system, processed by the amygdala, and it's been saying, hey, that's something we need to focus in on, or no, that's not that important, let's put it off to the side, or hey, that we better tag that negative, that seems to be a little bit of a danger zone for us. So effortful control is what the child does. And of course, as we're emphasizing today, your student is not the child. We really want you to get to look at the fact that the student is really the brain. You've got to get inside that brain. It's the child that controls that effortful control within themselves to decide whether to get focused in on you. And we have to help them, hopefully, make that choice in getting focused in where you are. There's a couple of neurological structures that we have to be aware of in processing effortful control. We'll start off with the limbic system that's right between your ears. That's the heart of your emotional setting. That's where the amygdala is. Those incoming signals have been coming in, and your brain has either said that's a negative, that's fearful, I'm going to stay downshifted and fight or flight, I feel in danger. Or it's going to tag things with a positive charge and saying, hey, I feel safe here, it's okay. And what the brain will do then with that kind of a signal, going up past the corpus callosum, which is neurological tissue that runs horizontally. I like to call that your World Wide Web, where every part of your brain gets to talk to every other part. Then above that is your cingulate. And I like to refer to that as your transmission system. That's where you think of one thought and then you think of another thought. Just this morning, you had to get up, prepare your breakfast, get dressed, get in the car, find your way here. Your cingulate was what brought up each one of those new ideas. That's the doorway into that prefrontal cortex where you do all your critical thinking. Think of Bloom's taxonomy. That's where all that stuff takes place. So when the amygdala is receiving positive interplay between other people, it stays calm, it stays upshifted, and that prefrontal cortex is working. And as a teacher, that's a very important place for you to want to be. That's what you want to get inside of. Now, another part of the brain we will talk about a little bit is that orbital frontal cortex, which is right behind the eyeball. That is another area of the brain that's very sensitive to negative and positive interactions and stimuli. I'll develop that in just a moment here. So here's a picture of the amygdala. It's that red area, and it's situated right next to the hippocampus, which is your doorway to long-term memory. So whether or not anything is remembered really depends on that amygdala making a decision. Do I shunt that over to the hippocampus with a positive charge that we'll stay upshifted and learn more? Or do I turn it into a negative charge? I'm not feeling good about this. I need to get into survival mode and fight my way out of this somehow. This is a slide that just reiterates that fact that effortful control is something that the child is in control of, and it's also involved with those prefrontal cortex and amygdala relationship. Okay, you have made effortful control in your own life to prepare the lesson for that day. You blocked out all the other things that you could have been doing, but you focused in on preparing that lesson for the children in the classroom the following day. You've made an effort, but can we make sure the child is going to make an effort? Because if they filter you out, nothing you had prepared is going to get in. It's just not going to happen. So can we influence the child's ability to exercise effortful control and to stay focused on you? Well, I need to tell you that most of your communication is done non-verbally. Now, if I would ask you, if I could have some question answered, I would say, are these children happy? And you would say, excuse me, hopefully you would say yes. And if I asked you why, you would probably say, well, they're smiling. And maybe they look like they might, be giggling a little bit. But somebody might respond and say the eyes are smiling. And that's really what this picture is about. The eyes are saying the same thing that the face is saying, which is the same thing that the body posture is saying, and immediately your right side of your brain reads that instantaneously and knows where those children are coming from, what's happening there. The little girl happens to be my daughter when she was 2, and the little boy happens to be her son when he was 2. Now, I also have a picture of a distant uncle that I see once in a while. He's a pretty happy guy, and I went to catch his picture, and I found that if I say banana daiquiri, it just puts a smile on his face, and he's ready to rumble. So here's a line drawing. I talked about the orbital frontal cortex previously. I said it sits right behind the eyeball, and it's also involved in positive, negative interchange, social interchange. With the work of Dr. Alan Shore, positive interaction, when the eyes are picking up a positive feed from people around it, it gets all excited. It sends out immense energy throughout the brain, and it stimulates brain growth, tissue formation, neurological interconnections, and it gets more complicated. I mean, the interaction between all of the brain cells. It's a much more complex brain when the child is receiving positive interaction. But if it is receiving negative feedback from that person through the eyes, through the face, body posture, let alone what they're saying, it shuts down that orbital frontal cortex. It doesn't get excited. It doesn't build neurological tissue. It doesn't encourage the linking of cells one to another and storing information. So we have 2 sites that we have to be concerned about. It's that amygdala needs to be positive. Through the eyes, orbital frontal cortex needs to be positive. Here's a line drawing talking about the interplay between your right hemisphere brain and another person's right hemisphere brain. When I'm looking at you, when you're looking at me, your right hemisphere is reading my right hemisphere. You know exactly how I feel. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to put it into words, but your body has already figured it out. It's just instantaneously. That's a line drawing. This is a real-life picture of that interchange. This happens to be Stacy and her daughter Lauren, friends of mine. They used to come to a lot of the trainings that I did on attachment, and their mom came as well. And Stacy told me that when she became pregnant and was going to have a baby, she was going to quit because I had convinced her how important those early years were. So yeah, she did. I lost a wonderful employee, but her mother took a wonderful photograph. I want you to look into those eyes and that facial expression. Do you think there isn't an exchange of information going on there? Oh yeah. The child hasn't learned language yet, but that little girl is getting mom's message. This sums up an awful lot of what I'm talking about today. So what I want you to do is forget this picture. Just wipe it out of your memory, okay? Forget about Stacy and little Lauren and those facial expressions, okay? Well, when I was in the process of preparing for this presentation, my wife and I were watching an educational program where educators were being interviewed. I must confess that my wife is an educator. She works for IU 13, Lancaster, Lebanon. She is regular education. Anything that has to do with reading, she's the go-to person for that. So we're watching this educational program, and they're interviewing Melinda Gates. And Melinda Gates is saying, well, we did this research and we found that if we ask certain questions of students, we can actually tell whether or not they're learning anything. And I thought, well, that is really cool. Out of all the things that you can ask, they had really zeroed in on some pretty important ones. So I asked my wife if she had a copy, and she didn't, but she had the web address and hooked me up, and I got the info. So I want to go briefly through the various headings of the questions. I'm not, on the posted information about my seminar, you have the whole slide. I'm not going to read all these questions, but they put it in the category of caring, the caring interaction between the child and the teacher, and also in control. Is there a teacher? Is there an adult coordinating everything? Is there clarifying? Does the teacher go back and make sure that all the children are getting the same message? And does the teacher need to do any scaffolding to help the child learn? Another category was challenge. The brain is built to challenge. Just like your stomach is built to receive food, smush it all up, mix it with digestive material, and send it on its way, your brain is designed to do nothing but think. It likes a challenge. It likes to analyze. It likes to process. It likes to compare. That's what it's built to do. And yes, the brain does need to be challenged. That's what it's all about. Captivate. Are there activities that the teacher is giving outside the classroom that extends that learning experience and keeps the child focused on the material? The other one is confer. Again, positive feedback. Back and forth. Teacher wants me to explain my own answers. Is it confirmation that the child is understanding it, gets the logical sequence of what's happening and what needs to be. The consolidate. Teacher prepares the lesson, comes in, breaks it down to basic components, explains that, makes sure that everybody understands it, then puts those pieces all back together to a unified whole so that when the child walks out of the classroom, there's a sense of, yeah, I got the gist of what this was all about. Now, in Bill and Melinda's research paper that I read, they said that if you just simply concentrate on control and challenge, you did. You're done. You got it. You can go home. No big deal. That's it. As a social worker, I beg to differ. With all due respects to Bill and Melinda Gates and the wonderful research they did, when I look at the tea leaves, what they say are just, oh my goodness. Okay, there's a formatting error on this slide. I'll try to put these pieces back together. They said that they were subgroups. And I really feel that what they said was a subgroup was really the most important piece. And so if I may approach the screen, okay, under the column, I made a column for safety. The brain needs to feel physically safe. And when I look at the question cluster, I found that the ones that talked about control, yeah, that really addresses that issue for the brain. Then I created another category for psychological safety. The child's brain really needs to feel psychologically safe. That this is going to be an environment where other people accept the brain for what it is or who it is. That sense of what's human about that person. Is it going to be respected and cherished and nourished? So I created the psychological safety, and I put clarify, captivate, but I also want to reach over there, caring, challenge, caring, confer, and consolidate. Whoa, hey, there's a step here. Whoa, I just learned something. Captivate should be over here. Consolidate should be over here. Confer should be over here. And care should be right here. Over on the full brain potential, those are the questions about challenge. Okay, that's how I put it together as a social worker. From my perspective, to the extent that the child knows that it is physically safe in that classroom, to the extent that the child feels psychologically safe in that classroom, with those positive feeds going through the orbital frontal cortex and also in through the amygdala, that brain is going to be upshifted so that, yes, you can then challenge them and they'll learn. But to the extent that child does not feel physically safe in that classroom or that school, to the extent that that child does not feel psychologically safe in that school, that brain is going to tag an awful lot as negative, and the brain is going to stay downshifted. When I say downshifted, I'm saying it downshifts from that prefrontal cortex, and all that Bloom's taxonomy stuff is gone. The kid just wants to survive, get through the day. I'm going to summarize all of that in a phrase out of the 1960s. Carl Rogers, very successful in working with people. He described what he did is every day, every person that he ever met, he treated them with unconditional, positive regard. Unconditional, there's no bias, no pre-thought. It's positive, looking for the good in that person. And regard is to respect them as a human being. If you do that, you're going to be dealing with a brain that stays upshifted. You are going to be able to get that lesson through to that child. The reason that I'm interested in this is because I simply feel that there are a lot of school children going to school today that do not feel safe in that school, let alone feeling psychologically safe in that school, where some other mean kid can tweet something that goes out to 1 million people on Facebook and totally destroys the psychological safety that that brain needs to survive. And then they go out and kill themselves. What else is left? You've destroyed the soul and heart of that person. I'm going to offer a new term. It's called effortful teaching. Effortful teaching I define as teaching in the best interest of the child's brain. Effortful teaching is what you're going to be doing after today. You're going to be taking all of this brain research and understanding, and you're going to go back to your classrooms and hopefully begin to see how can I fit that in to create a better environment for my child's or my students' brains so that they stay upshifted into that prefrontal cortex, which is where I want to be with every child, right behind their foreheads. That's where you want to live. And if we can have effortful teaching, then if there are some administrators here, how about effortful administration? As teachers, if you go to that Bill Gates document and you go down through those questions, can you answer positively in light of your supervising staff? And if we can have that, how about an effortful school board? And how about an effortful community? Thank you.